Welcome to the Poison Pen, and welcome to the virtual book launch of Brad Thor's 19th Scot Harvath thriller, Near Dark. Now, I say 19th Scot Harvath, but this is Brad's 20th thriller because he wrote a book called The Athena Project a while back. So welcome, Brad. What a thrill to see you.
It's a thrill to see you too, Barbara. It's so funny. If someone had told me last year when we were together that we were going to have to do it remotely, I would have said, you're nuts. How could I not come to the Poison Pen for one of my biggest events of the year? But I'm glad we could do this together.
I really am too. And as I mentioned to you before we started, I'm entranced by the color pops in your office. So tell us the story of that fabulous pillow.
So right back here, it's the British Union Jack. I'm a huge Winston Churchill fan, and if I tilt this a little bit, you can see I've got a chrome Concorde airplane sitting on the coffee table across from the fireplace and TV. What you can't see, because I can't turn this around, is I have a huge American flag framed that a friend of mine had flown in Iraq on 4th of July years ago, and I've got it up here. So black, white, and chrome, and then just pops of red, white, and blue, and again, the pillow is a little reminder of Churchill and how steadfast and proud and unwavering he was during the Blitz, which I'm currently reading Eric Larson's book, The Splendid and the Vile, and it just reminds me of the fortitude of the British people and how they could get through the Blitz, we can get through COVID just as well.
A very good point. My own personal feeling is that Britain might very well have given up and lost the war without Churchill. I've often thought,
Amen.
Yep, it was just his unbelievable tenacity. I mean, bulldog is not an unfair description. And also his magic with words. You know, weren't we lucky that we had two leaders, Roosevelt and Churchill, who really were gifted with words?
Well, yeah, and aren't we lucky that Churchill used his gift with words to persuade Roosevelt? It took a while, because Roosevelt wasn't on board with the British war effort right away, but he did come around. We know how he came around. We had to get dragged into the war and everything, but they never gave up, the Brits, and God love them, they saw it through. They were ready to fight every last man, woman, and child on their own soil if they had to. That kind of determination and grit is within all of us, especially this country. So I know we can make it through COVID. We've all just got to commit to do what we need to do to get through this.
Well, you certainly illustrate that with Scott in Near Dark. But before we talk about Near Dark, I want to go back to the Lions of Lucerne. I love the cover. I really love Lucerne, and one of the memories I have of it, I first went to Europe when I was 15 with my grandmother. So it wasn't that far away from the war, and there was still a lot of damage, a lot of refuge, stuff left over. But I remember walking across those wooden bridges in Lucerne, and then I remember riding the cable car up Mount Pilatus, which is in fact a feature of the Lions of Lucerne. And it's always stuck with me. Why did you decide to set your first Scott book in Lucerne? Or anyway.
So I had a travel show on public television years ago, and I went to Lucerne. I'd heard how beautiful it is, and I saw the monument there, the dying lion with the spear broken off in its side, which was carved in a kind of a rock face in Lucerne to commemorate the 700-plus Swiss Guard that died defending King Louis and Marie Antoinette in the initial throes of the French Revolution. And I always liked the alliteration, the Lion of Lucerne. And I said, if I ever write a novel, I'm going to call it The Lions of Lucerne. I don't know what it'll have to do with Switzerland, but I had the title first. And while I was on my honeymoon, actually, I was reading the International Herald Tribune while I was in Amsterdam, and I came across this little intelligence briefing, true story, about a Swiss intelligence officer who had embezzled all this money from the Swiss army to train his own shadow militia high in the Alps with high-tech weapons from his own private arsenal. And I said, those are the Lions of Lucerne. That's the story, the basis for the story, and that's what gave birth to my first novel.
Wow. Well, you had the idea. Did Scott come after the idea, or did you have Scott and then you were looking for a landscape for him? Which came first?
So the idea came first, and I knew I wanted a certain type of protagonist, and I wanted that protagonist to represent the handful of people I knew in the special operations and in the intelligence world. So I wanted somebody that represented the best of those worlds. And I had some friends who were doing these kinds of things, and I thought, okay, I'm going to pull them together. Harvath actually is named after a friend of ours who worked at the Department of Justice. So it's Harvath is a little kind of puzzle of all these pieces. Plus, the bigger pieces are me, because I'm sure that Bond was Ian Fleming's alter ego, Jack Ryan was Clancy's, and Harvath is mine. And I always say he gets to do all the things my wife won't let me do. So.
Okay, that's a valid point. So I have been called out on this twice. So I'm going to ask you, why did you decide to spell his name with one T?
So it's a great question. A lot of readers have had this question and put it to me, and I finally had to answer it in the novel. So my brother's name is Scott with one T, and my parents decided Scott with one T because my mother did not like the way it would look to have Scottthor. So she yanked one of the T's off of Scott. So I did that for my hero, but I had so many readers asking me why that I eventually said, well, his middle name was Thomas, and his mother didn't like the idea of Scottthormas, and so that's why one of the T's got chopped off.
Ah, okay. Well, you have, as you know, a super publicist, and once or twice he sent me an email and he said, Barbara, learn to spell Scott.
My entertainment attorney is Scott with two T's out in Hollywood, and he says every year I send him an advance copy of the book, and he always lets me know he received it. And he said, is this the one where Scott finds the other T that's missing from his name? So I kind of get grief year-round on the spelling there, except for my brother. My brother and my parents, the only ones that don't complain.
Well, actually, I wasn't even complaining or giving you grief. I just think it's interesting, and I thought there must be a real reason that you didn't just like lose a T when you were typing one day. And so now you've answered that. Now let's talk about Blacklash for a minute, because without Backlash, we can't really talk about Near Dark. I think that it was as though, I mean, Scott was going in one direction. Well, he's gone in a lot of directions, but he's beginning to focus on this one way to go. Why is it, without revealing it, why did you decide to just blow up this world, poor man?
It just felt like the right thing to do. I wanted a challenge, and I wanted to shake things up, and I think that's very healthy to do. And I love TV shows where I'm constantly shocked. A character may disappear permanently, a character may come back that you never thought was coming back. And I'm a big fan. I'm not an outliner. I'm very organic with my writing, and I'm a big fan of the quote from Robert Frost, which is, no joy in the writer, no joy in the reader, no surprise in the writer, no surprise in the reader, no tears in the writer, no tears in the reader. So I like to have the experience writing the novels that hopefully my readers are going to have reading them. So I want my palms to sweat, I want my heart to pound, I want to go home from my office wondering, oh God, what did I do? How is he going to get out of this? How am I going to fix this tomorrow? I painted him into such a corner. And I find that by challenging myself like this, it actually makes the books better. That's one of the things I love about being an author, is there's always room to hone your craft and get better. And so the son of a Marine, my mom was a flight attendant in the 60s for TWA. Both parents became entrepreneurs, and they've always taught me never take your customers for granted. And in fact, I take it a step further, and I've always said that the readers are my bosses. I don't work for Simon & Schuster, I work for the readers. And when they leave reviews, they leave me stars wherever they do, or they tell a neighbor or a coworker or a friend, gotta read this Brad Thor guy. That's my annual performance review. So I always want people to know that if they pick up a Brad Thor novel, I say it's like James Bond movies. You don't need to have ever seen one before to get into the newest one. I'm going to catch you up real fast. But I want you to know that you're getting the best that I'm capable of, that I'm never going to phone it in. I'm never going to rest on my laurels. I'm going to give you the best white-knuckle thrill ride I can give you. And so shaking things up in the past couple of books has been a lot of fun. It's just the muse told me to go this way, and I've been at this game long enough to know you do not ignore the muse, nor do you argue with her. You do what she tells you, or she will go away, and she will not come back, maybe for a long time. So you have to obey.
Maybe like one of those penguins swimming around the icebergs of memory. No, you don't want her to do that. Reed Carlton has been part of Scott's life for quite a while, the Carlton Group. Do you think that, to really write this kind of book, you can't leave your protagonist in the CIA or the FBI, which are so structured and so, non-trivial? I don't even know what else I want to say besides not structured. So you created the Carlton Group as a operative base for him. But over the course of the books, is if they're not aging in real time, at least you're moving in a trajectory forward. So Reed Carlton was definitely growing older, developing Alzheimer's, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really interesting predicament for a person who's worked in intelligence. What happens when that person is no longer a secure person? Becomes a risk because of memory failure.
Yeah, it's a great question. So Reed Carlton is actually based on someone that I was quite friendly with, who was spent a career at the CIA and then left and was upset, felt that they could be doing a better job, and started his own private group. I had seen that this was good. I felt this was going to be the wave of the future, with Blackwater recruiting former special operations people and in carrying out those roles. It only seemed like a matter of time before that was being done in the intelligence community, and then someone was going to combine the two so that you could not only gather intelligence, you could analyze it and act on it, and it could allow the president plausible deniability, so on and so forth. So this idea appealed to me, and I was trying to work through this. Reed Carlton had handpicked Harvath to be his protege, and eventually expected Harvath to take over the business. And when I was writing it, Reed Carlton put the request to him directly, and Harvath said no, which I was even surprised that I wrote it that way. I know a lot of people who don't want to leave that world, don't want to be out of the action, don't want to be, quote unquote, a former action guy or gal. They love the lifestyle. It can be very tough on your personal life, but they don't want to sit behind a desk. They want to be in the field. And this idea that Scot Harvath would keep grabbing the most dangerous assignments, would not agree to go from labor to management and start being more of a coach, developing up-and-coming players, I thought created some interesting tension in the books. And how might he mollify Reed Carlton? What kind of an agreement might they come to? Okay, 2 days a week in the office equals we'll give you a week on an assignment or something like that. So this idea that somebody was being selfish, Harvath was being selfish, where he didn't believe anybody could do the job that he could, I thought was something fresh and interesting, and contributed to the complexity of the character.
You also have another issue, I think, with a guy like Harvath, where you have somebody in super physical condition, combat ready, all these other things. They wind up really addicted to the adrenaline. The adrenaline dumps, the rush, and so forth. And in a way, it's just as tough as alcoholism or opioids or something. And so why would he want to give up that rush, in order to sit behind a desk? And you can't really fly a desk in the same way that you can do a mission. So I thought that was part of it, that Scott just couldn't really give up,
all the excitement.
Yeah.
I mean, you get a lift. There's nothing like it. And so, yeah, that's what he would be giving up, is that adrenaline. And he can't do it. Can't do it, doesn't want to do it.
And if he did give it up, he could never be the operative that he is. It takes that kind of adrenaline to really let people do super heroic things.
Well, it does, and the physical fitness required for this, he's cheating now. He's actually taking some performance-enhancing drugs. He's working with docs who can help him. I have him actually working at a real-life sports rehabilitation center down in Florida, where they train up football players before the NFL Combine. And so the military realized a while ago that the injuries that their elite warriors were suffering were very similar to what elite athletes were suffering, and that a lot of the sports medicine practices could be applied to SEALs and Delta Force personnel and so on and so forth. So I've got Harvath doing everything he can to keep that edge, because that edge in the field is critical. That half second, off his run, or that ability to just quickly turn can mean the difference between life and death for somebody like Harvath.
So you've got Reed Carlton and the Carlton group in the succession thing. You've got Harvath, who is right at the top of his game, doesn't really want to give it up. And then you have him fall in love with a woman who not only could be a wife, but also has a child, which now puts a whole different complexion on how much danger he can run into if he is responsible for a safety of a child and a wife. So you've got all three of these coming together in Backlash. I don't want to talk, And so,
and that's what he wanted, Barbara. That's the one thing he said he claimed he wanted was a family. Right. All throughout the books. That's the one thing Harvath wants besides the freedom to go to his job all the time. He wanted to have a family. And so this woman with the child who was very cool and he loved her, great balance. She understood him, understood that he was going to have to go away. But she was starting to chafe at the fact that it's not just him going away, it's the fact that he volunteers continuously, almost like he wants to be away, and goes to the most dangerous places and takes the worst jobs, as we were just talking about. So that creates tension between the two of them. How can you say you want a family, yet you continually put yourself in danger? So again, human beings are complex, difficult to understand, driven by different impulses, desires. We want a lot of things at the same time that may not make sense together, that may conflict. Oftentimes they do.
Well, indeed they do. So with all those three things coming together, you had to have a really slam bang ending for Backlash, which I don't want to give away. But when we start, that's why I had this long lead up to it. When we start Near Dark, Scot is in a very dark place. He's lost a lot of things that matter to him. And, you know, he's unmoored, he's adrift, he's dark. And I often think that's a really good way to strip down a character and, you know, and start over again, is to take away the things that truly mattered and then see what's left.
Yeah, and that was the intention here, was that everything has been taken from him. Everything has kind of come home to roost. He's at the absolute lowest point in his life, personally, professionally, and really has no desire to go on. And that's an interesting thing. I've never written him that way before. He's never experienced this. It's almost as if all of these heartaches and all these traumas that he's had to deal with this whole life are just compounded and just like a tsunami crashed down on him. And he's in a very, very bad place at the beginning. And this was interesting. How do you take somebody from this point and move them forward? How does he protect, and this is the question, that sputtering flame of humanity that's almost extinguished in him? Hence the title Near Dark. It's almost complete and total darkness. Is he going to spill over into that darkness, or is somehow that flame going to get protected and he's not going to go completely into the darkness? And that's darkness plays from the epigraph from Plato at the beginning of the book, the title, all of it. It's a theme that weaves its way throughout the novel.
Absolutely. It's a wonderful title. I think Backlash is a wonderful title, too. You're good at titles.
Those two are my editor. I got to give my editor credit. Emily, in our whole career together, the last two books I've gotten from my wonderful editor, or the last two titles from my wonderful editor, Emily Bessler. I gave her a lot that she said no to, and she gave me two that I said yes to. So it worked out.
They have worked out. So among other things that he's not doing, there is a thing he is doing, which is Scot is really trying to drown himself in alcohol because he is so miserable, which takes him, strangely enough, to a bar. Amazing. And in the bar, something happens. Yep, imagine. Something happens that kind of reignites him. So you want to tell us, because that's really where the novel kicks off.
Right. So if there was going to be a log line for Near Dark as a movie, it would be a $100 million bounty has just been taken out on America's top spy. So Harvath's at his absolute low point. A couple of guys walk into a bar. He's got no idea what's going on, except that his spidey sense starts tingling the way when these two walk into the bar. And he immediately, being a detail guy, even though he's at a low point, he's drinking himself to death, he still picks up on stuff. There's a lot about these two characters that don't make sense. A lot of stuff. You can tell there's wrong things and something's not happening correctly here. And it sparks something in him, and that kicks off all the action for the book. And it's so hard because I light that fuse right at the beginning that's almost all I can say without giving away like this first kind of cliffhanger that happens right away in chapter 1 in the book.
Very true. It's always hard to talk to you about your books before anybody's read them. I often think that we should do a follow-up. You know,
Sure.
6 months in, we should really have this whole conversation again. And in fact, you know what? Because of this technology, we might really be able to do some of that. Because there are some books where you can't ever do them justice if all you can do is talk about the setup.
Right. Yeah, play peekaboo with the plot and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, That's a neat idea, like a book club where we can all get back together. We've all read the book, and
Right.
now we can talk about it. It's going to be a spoiler zone. So if you haven't read the book, you probably don't want to watch this.
I agree. We did an event like that for an author last January, before everything, back in before with a capital B, before everything
Before
shut
times.
down. And her book had come out in December. So we had time because of the delay. She didn't show up till the end of January. So I did make it a spoiler discussion. You had to have read the book because the whole point of the book was the last 3 pages. I mean, the entire point of the book was the last 3 pages. And when you got there, I don't know anyone who had figured it out, including me, who was hardly ever in that position. I was completely surprised, and I thought, okay, if we're going to talk about this book, we have got to read it all the way through. There's just no other way that makes any sense. So it would be fun to come back. But talk to me about, about a bounty, because you have mentioned that. That's an interesting idea. So what you basically set up is almost like a treasure hunt or a bounty, a huge financial payoff for what happens.
Right. So the book starts, there's a prologue, and it starts with the bounty being taken out on Harvath, and the gentleman who shows up to contract this tells the man who's going to find the assassins, don't just pick one, put this out to all the assassins at the same time, and whoever gets to Harvath first gets the bounty. So that's the idea, and I went, oh my God, how am I going to do this? Because Harvath is so well trained, if he throws away his phone, chucks it into the ocean, you're never going to find him. And so I reached out to some people I know in kind of Harvath's world, in the real world, and said, what would you do here? And one of the folks said to me, well, if somebody did this to me, I'm going to tell you something. The only way to kill a contract like this is to kill the person who put out the contract. Right. And he said, it immediately looks like cat and mouse, where the cats are chasing you and you're the mouse. He said, you have to flip that script. And you become the cat, and you force the people after you and the person who put out the contract to be the mice. You just automatically determine you're the cat. I'm not going to sit and wait to be killed, and you go after them, and you do everything you can. You absolutely break every single rule along the way, and you burn through every person you need to burn through until you get to the person who placed the contract on you, and then you have to kill them. And I'm like, has this happened to you before? He goes, my phone's starting to sound funny now. I'm going to go. That was it.
It's a really great idea. What I thought was interesting is that, so often this kind of thing is set up from misguided patriotism or fervent patriotism or religious zeal or some kind of ideology or agenda is at work, to provoke somebody to be an assassin, a state agent, whatever you want to call it. But I really like the idea that this was basically, they were in there for the money.
Yeah. And there are people that's what motivates them. It's not exactly an ideology, be it patriotism or religious zeal. Some people are just in it for the cash. So it was a fun book to write. There's not a ton of people in the underworld I can reach out to say, how would you track? I got all my contacts are good guys. I avoid the bad guys like the plague. But at least I know enough people that have dealt with things, whether it's hostage negotiators at the FBI or people at the CIA. There was enough that could cobble together interesting pieces of information to really put this whole thing together. And a neat thing was I was looking for a particular character, and I'm not going to spoil it. I was looking for a character, I was, how am I going to create this character? And one morning I woke up and I went, I've already created that character. I actually had that character in my book, Foreign Influence, and I'm going to bring this person back because we only saw the person for like a chapter. So it is a neat Easter egg. You don't need to have read, like I said, you don't need to have read any other Brad Thor book to love Near Dark. But if you have read my past novels, particularly if you've read Foreign Influence, there is a character from there, 2 characters actually, that I brought back for a real neat role in this book. And it's just kind of a fun thank you to longtime readers. And I think it'll be neat for fans to stumble across that.
It really will. I'm so disillusioned. I was really hoping you'd plunged into the dark web and actually. But then I know you, so I thought the odds were pretty weak that you would have done that.
No. I know other people that have done it, so that's kind of an area I don't want to go. So
okay.
It's a nasty thing, and I wouldn't want to subject. I'd have to buy like a completely different computer and set it up someplace completely different, not have any of that stuff touch my house or my office. So
And then you too could be investigated by federal agents if things
right.
are
Yeah,
wrong.
then I'm on a blacklist. Then that's the last thing I need.
So, if you have pared down Scot's life as you have for Near Dark, then that leaves you room to introduce new characters. So, talk to me a little bit about the Norwegian Ninja, because she is wonderful, and I really like calling her the Norwegian Ninja. I like the alliteration. I like the cultural juxtaposition. Yep. I think it describes her really well.
So, for all of you watching right now and listening, she's not a ninja. She just was able to kind of sneak up on Harvath at one point, and she does it a couple more times. So he jokingly refers to her as the Norwegian Ninja. So it's even more endearing because she's not some ninja. That's not her thing. But she is an intelligence officer from the Norwegian Intelligence Service, and was a member of the all-female Special Forces unit in the Norwegian Army, originally codenamed Tundra, that's now called the Jaeger unit. And she's got a very interesting past. She is very broken, very filled with pain and heartache and some real bad descents into bad places, but messed up enough and somewhat recovered from being that messed up, but still kind of drags a little bit of her past behind her, that she's a good match for Harvath. Doesn't take any crap from Harvath, is quick-witted, is really good at her craft, whether it's intelligence or the special operations side of things. So he's really met his match in Solveig Kolstad, the Norwegian intelligence operative. And, I've got about 60% men, 40% women who read my books. I'm surrounded by fantastic women in my personal life, my professional life, who I work with. My daughter is just a voracious reader and so smart that I really wanted to give, particularly my female readers, a fabulous female character. I've always made the female characters central to the plot. They're never window dressing. They're never there just to look good. They always play a key role in the novels. And I said, but I really want to make somebody special. I really want Harvath to meet his match in this one. And so that's what I did with Solveig, and the deep dive into her and what motivates her and why they fit together so well. And part of it is she gives as good as she gets. And actually, she may give a little bit better than Harvath gives, because he's a smart ass, but boy, does she have the market cornered on him. He can give it to her, and then she comes back twice as hard. And I thought that was fun.
It is fun. I like her a lot. Now, I am a person who has traveled all over Norway. I have done it by cruise ship. I have done it by train. I have done it by bus. I have done it by car. I have gone over the whole top and on to Murmansk. I've been to Svalbard and all. But the one place, this is a gift to you because you like Churchill and World War II, and you might want to look at it, is Narvik, Norway, which is the highest point in Norway the Nazis got to. It has an incredible local museum about the Norwegian resistance and the port. Narvik. It also has one of the world's great cable cars, so I'm tying it back to Mount Pilatus since I already know that you like that. And one of the best ways to get there is from Lapland. There is a small train that goes from Lapland across the mountains from Sweden, and it debouches into Narvik. So now that you've got this wonderful woman, I really want to recommend Narvik to you.
Well, it sounds like I need another research trip once we're allowed out of our houses and out of our country. It sounds awesome. Tax write-off.
I thought it was, but what really is astonishing is the World War II history there and connected with Britain, which I thought would resonate with you. The other place that I have been that features in Near Dark, and unfortunately because at the last minute we decided to hardwire this computer so we wouldn't lose you, I don't have the photograph, but talk to me about, it's on my phone and I don't think that, you know what I can do? I can't do
Maybe we can post some of them online on the Facebook page in the comment section.
I could have my husband introduce this, the video that's recording on Zoom. I can have him put the picture of Mont Saint-Michel. But Mont Saint-Michel is one of the truly most amazing medieval structures, still intact, still astonishing, although I don't know what's going on in France, but if they don't stop burning down cathedrals, honestly, I mean, the whole thing with Nantes was just terrifying to realize.
That's crazy. Well, as you know, the great thing about Mont Saint-Michel is that it's a tidal island in a tidal basin, and has a causeway going out. All they have to do is block the causeway. It's a fortified village. For those of you who've never seen it, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's been called one of the 8 wonders of the world. It's one of the most popular tourist attractions in Europe, and definitely in France. It's right up there in the top. And what's neat is this island that's been fortified. So an island that's fortified with a little village, and the island kind of goes like a huge slab of granite that goes up like this, and there's an abbey with a church at the very top. And that's what we use for the cover of Near Dark. So that's the structure. And it was funny because when I released the cover to fans, some real savvy people like you, Barbara, who had been there said, is that Mont Saint-Michel, Mont Saint-Michel? And all I could say is you're going to have to read the book to find out. But now, of course, we're bringing the book out and everything so we can talk about it a little bit tonight. But I've been there a couple of times, and I've always loved it and always wanted to set a thriller there. So it had always kind of been in my back pocket, but I hadn't had the right story. I've been saving it, and this one was it. I couldn't wait to do it. And I love it so much, and I'm sure you do too. It's so special. And I'm just hoping, I can't wait to hear from fans who have been there. I'm hoping that I've captured it. Right down to the omelets that are made at that beautiful hotel and restaurant that I feature in there, and the way they whisk in the copper bowls and have that beat. It's just, it is a magical, magical place. And I'm hoping that not only once people have read it, that it'll resonate with them, but that they'll also go on YouTube or whatever and pull up some of the videos that have been done. There's incredible videos just show you these little winding cobblestone streets and the stairs. It's magical.
It is magical. You have to have fabulous knees to go there too. I'm here to tell you, because the first time I went, I had actually fractured my fibia, and it was
a bad place to visit.
But when I went back, I was able to do the usual mountain goat kind of thing. It's off the coast of Normandy. It's not that far from the beaches. It's actually very near the town where Anthony Doerr wrote All the Light You Cannot See, for people who,
Saint-Malo, yep.
From Saint-Malo, you just sort of drift on by it. It's also, there's an incredible oyster. Some of the world's great oysters are right nearby. Mont Saint-Michel.
And the mutton, the sheep is fantastic because of the salt in the grasses where they graze their sheep actually gets into the meat, and so it's incredible. The flavor is amazing, and then also Calvados brandy is from that area. So you have to have Calvados when you're there.
Yeah,
I should have had one tonight as we were doing this. I could have had my snifter, been very author-like. We wear the smoking jacket and the snifter.
Well, I tell you what, when we do the follow-up book discussion group, you can have the snifter or brandy. And so can I, although I might have a few oysters on point because they are so great.
Love that.
The other point I wanted to make was there is a causeway now, but there wasn't a causeway for a really long time. And so it was a very...
You could get stuck overnight.
Or you drowned. I mean, those are the two choices because the tide there is vicious. So if you got caught...
Which is why it was never captured. That was the big strategic benefit there. So both times I went, I stayed there, which was really neat and very romantic. The idea that the sea would come in and you couldn't get off the island. That was a big strategic advantage.
Right. So all kinds of wonderful reasons to read Near Dark. Now it's time to see if Patrick has questions to step up here. And I'm sure he has a lot of questions from fans, so he's going to wander up here, taking off his mask as he comes.
Hey, Brad. Yeah, you have a great group of people watching. And some really interesting questions. One of them, just to kick this off, Matt asks, of all the celebrity fans of your novels, which one, when you heard about him or her, was the best surprise?
Oh my gosh. You know what? I tell you, they've all been really, really cool. Kim Fields, the actress, is a big fan. Milo Ventimiglia from This Is Us, another big fan. Spencer Pratt's a big fan. Anthony Scaramucci. I'm good friends with the current National Security Advisor, Robert O'Brien. He's been a longtime supporter of the books. It's such a boy, Matt. Thank you for a great question. And now I'm blanking. There's going to be like a ton of people that I can't think of because I'm on the spot now. I've never been asked that question. That's a fabulous, fabulous question. But that's kind of a short list. And knowing me, as we go through other questions, more will pop into my head, and I'll go, "Hey, Matt, by the way, add this person to the list. So if I come up with some more, I'll give them to you.
Did you say Kim Fields from The Facts of Life?
Facts of Life and lots of other great productions. Yep.
Wow.
Kim's terrific.
That's cool. I've had a number of questions of people asking about the Lions of Lucerne movie adaptation. Do you have any updates on that?
Yeah, so with a town filled with as many beautiful people as Hollywood has, I have managed to kiss every frog, I think, in the city of Los Angeles. I have been left at the altar so many times. Great scripts written, and then the executives at the studio change, and it's like a new lion coming in and killing all the cubs and the pride. All the projects get scrapped, and the new execs want their projects in. So what's interesting is right before COVID took off, we got approached by this fantastic Hollywood producer. And I wish I could name him because he is amazing. And I guarantee that those of you watching have seen this person's movies. So wonderful. Came to us and said, listen, I love these books. I think we can do this, this, and this. And I think it's going to be key to get you the right director. And I'm like, okay, I'm pretty opinionated when it comes to directors. And I know what I like and I don't like. And I've got some ideas. He's like, who? And I said, well, you tell me who you think. And he said, well, here's the first three I would go to. And right away, the first one of his first three was my number one pick. And I said, you can make this happen? He goes, yeah, I'll set up a phone call. You guys chat. Let's see if you get along. Great. And you want to work together? Great. He put together the phone call with this amazing director. This guy's one of the biggest directors in LA. The director said, yes, let's do it. I want to work with you, Brad, and with this producer. And so now we are looking to put together a package so that we can have everything buttoned up so that by the time COVID lifts, we can either already be shooting, maybe like in a New Zealand situation where we can quarantine the crew that we would take with us, private plane, charter plane, quarantine for 2 weeks in LA at an air base or something like that, fly to New Zealand, an additional 2 weeks quarantine, and then start working there because they've had such good luck with coronavirus that we could actually be ready to put something out as soon as everything lifts. So that's the hope now. But this thing is like going to war. So you have to go step by step by step in the filmmaking or even the TV making process. But that's the most current update. I wish I could give you the names of the people and everything, but I agreed that I would let them make the press release. And so that's the position I'm in. I don't want to preempt anything that they're doing. They want to be able to say, we've got everything pulled together and here's the big story and everything is all in place. That's what they want to do.
That's really exciting. I rushed off to get my phone. I'm going to show Mont Saint-Michel.
Hey, there it is. Look at that.
And one more, and then I will give it to Patrick. There you can see it with the causeway. And I'll give it to...
go raise it a little bit higher, Barbara. It was go a little higher. There you go. So yeah, you can see someone standing there on the causeway. Here's all the sand that's in front, the tidal basin.
Well,
yep. Actually, I think it was the model for... I think Frozen used Hallstatt in Austria, a beautiful lakeside village, and I think the Tangled tale by Disney used Mont Saint-Michel, if I'm correct. My children are getting older now, so I'm less in touch with recent Disney productions. Things. My apology to those at home yelling at the screen. No, it wasn't.
For those of you watching it, Patrick can put this in front of the Facebook camera before we're done. I'm sorry that I didn't get it set up to show up on the screen with Brad, but nevertheless, we'll show it to you, so don't go away when we're done with the questions. All right, more.
Well, there are a number of people that mention Jack Carr, and I don't know if you saw the video that he did with Barbara.
I did.
Yeah. And
very kind.
This guy says, his name is Steven, he says, Jack Carr puts Brad Thor Easter eggs in his books. Brad has put similar Easter egg nods to Jack in his books. So that's just mainly a comment. And this is an interesting question. Somebody asks about let's see, he says, Stephen says, we all know the great writers today that you have helped out, but who are the spy thriller authors who influenced you in high school, college, and post USC?
Well, okay, so I grew up reading Freddie Forsyth, John le Carré, Robert Ludlum, Tom Clancy, and then what's really nice is that with my first novel, Kyle Mills gave me a blurb. Kyle, who's now writing for Vince Flynn's estate, the Mitch Rapp novels. Vince Flynn himself gave me a blurb, and also Nelson DeMille. And I've always loved Nelson's books. The John Corey character is one of the funniest, best characters I've ever read. In Lion's Game to this day, Plum Island, The Gold Coast, which is not a John Corey thing. Nelson's stuff has just always been fantastic. He's such a bright, funny guy, and I'm a huge fan. And I was friends with Kyle Mills before I became an author, and I just have just boatloads of respect for Kyle. He's so talented. He's always been very kind to me. So it's just kind of neat. You get into this business. I'm friends with James Rollins and Steve Berry. It's really nice. Brad Meltzer, one of the nicest guys I've ever met in my life. I cannot say enough good things about Meltzer. I don't know Grisham. I don't know Baldacci. Never met Stephen King. So there's some people who I enjoy reading who I've never met. I got to meet Pat Conroy, though, at the Savannah Writers Festival, Savannah Literary Festival before he died, and I loved Pat. Pat was fantastic. Really, really neat guy. So I've gotten to be friends with some of my contemporaries, and then there's some authors that I'm still looking forward to meeting at some point.
Lovely. Can I give a shout out, since you've mentioned him? Kyle Mills will be debuting his new Vince Flynn novel here on September 20, I think it's the 22nd, the Monday. Does that sound right? Pretty sure it is. And he's really a wonderful guy. He's come down here. And Vince was I don't know if I ever told you this story, Brad. One day in the back room of our little poison pen, before we expanded, some guy drove up in a car, knocked on the door, and came in. And he introduced himself, and he said, "I've published a book myself, and I have copies in the trunk of my car. I wonder if I
starting out.
I wonder if I
transfer of power, right? Or term limits.
It was
term limits. Sorry.
Right. And he said, "I wonder if I could give you one, and if you liked it, maybe I could come back and do a book event with you." And I said,
"Great book."
Yeah,
Fabulous
I said sure, and we actually stayed with Vince all the way to the day that he couldn't travel. When he was so ill, as we all know, he died sadly from cancer. But right up until I think the last book, he was always here. Such a wonderful guy, and I'm glad that Kyle, who I think is a wonderful author, is the one that has taken on and is continuing.
It's such a good fit. Kyle is just a great author, and everyone who's read the Mitch Rapp books written by Kyle have said that he's got the voice, he's got all the characters, and it's just been a seamless transition. The diehard fans just love it, and I couldn't be happier for him and for Vince's family. That's terrific.
Wonderful. Any more?
Yeah, Luigi asks, I love the relationship between the troll and Scott and how that has evolved over time. Was that by design, or did it evolve as you evolved as a writer and added more books to the series?
So great question, Luigi. Thank you. I fell in love with that character as I was writing that character, and I said, oh, God, I want to keep him around. And I think he's pretty deep, and I want to get to know him better. And I really would love it if he and Scott could develop some sort of a détente that could evolve into a working relationship. So it was very organic. It was not planned that way. He was just this little SOB. It was a pain in everybody's ass. Everybody wanted to kill him. And I just thought, boy, how sad this might be to be a person like this. And I thought, here's somebody who's very lonely, who has to pay to have women with him and all this kind of stuff. And he loves his food, he loves his wine, he loves his 2 dogs, blah, 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 blah. But that's a pretty lonely, cold existence. And there's got to be some spark of humanity in him that if you approached him the right way, if you wrote the character the right way, that could be kindled and that could grow. And you could take this character from being kind of this lone, very bad person into being part of something bigger than himself and finding purpose and finding the goodness in who he is. So great question, and it was very organic, but it was fun to basically unpack him and see him evolve over time.
Plus you got to give Scott 2 dogs that he doesn't actually have to take care of.
Yeah, and the one puppy that Nicholas gave him ended up going off with a girlfriend, and probably for the best for Harvath, because how's he going to take care of a dog? He's never home.
Yes.
So,
any more?
Yeah, interesting question. Was there any particular type of trade craft that you researched for this novel?
Oh, good question. Good question. I was trying to put together some of the old trade craft with some of the new technology that's being used. In particular, you're going to see a very small, very compact drone in this new book that can be carried and deployed at a moment's notice anywhere. So it's evolving. I'm still a big believer in kind of baseline Spies 101, Tradecraft 101, that there are certain skills that are never going to go out of style. You're always going to need them. You know, there's always going to be dead drops and all this kind of stuff. But I'm fascinated with how you take the old school stuff that absolutely works and needs to be a basis for any successful intelligence operative, and then how do you mix that with the new technology and everything that's happening? So it's a marriage between the two. So having done so much tradecraft stuff, I don't know that there's anything new. Nothing new has come to me that I've been told or taught by anyone. I think they've probably taught me, my people have taught me a ton of stuff that works that they use in the field. And I've even made up some stuff in the novels that I've had some of my spook friends say, that's good. I'm actually going to use that one overseas. So it's kind of fun to have a fresh opinion on it from my side and get that kind of feedback. But I think there's some new things in the book, particularly with the meeting of old school tradecraft and new technology that you'll enjoy.
You know, I realized that I never did make the commercial here, but Brad thoughtfully and kindly signed hundreds, actually, of copies of Near Dark for the Poison Pen, and they should be here, I suspect, tomorrow. There's a very cool postcard that your daughter inserted in the books, right?
4 different ones. So we created 4 special postcards. So when you get your book for the Poison Pen, by the way, folks, this is the only store that I agreed to sign books for this year. So this is the only place you can get a signed Brad Thor book. So I created 4 different postcards, 5 by 7. They're really meaty, with a cool photo on one side and an explanation on the back as to how that plays into the novel. So if you order your signed book from Poison Pen, will get one of these 4 postcards included with your novel. Pretty cool.
Very
and
cool.
Yes, my daughter flapped the books for me to sign, and she inserted the postcards. Family business. We had the assembly line going at our dining room table.
It really was a family business, and honestly, guys, we only have a couple dozen left, so if you're at all interested, do not delay. Get on our website and order it quickly, because they'll be gone, I think, by tomorrow. Patrick, is there a last question that you'd like to ask?
Yeah, actually, I have a question for you, Brad.
Sure.
I'm always fascinated with, a good spy's ability to kind of compartmentalize things and the need to do that. Is there, in your experience, is there a psychological profile that makes for a good agent or somebody in intelligence?
Yeah, I think so. It's a great question. Thank you, Patrick. If you look at Navy SEALs, Delta Force operatives, or intelligence operatives, whether they be, operating under non-official cover or they're at the embassy, you really need people that have incredible discipline over their mind. You look at everything the SEALs go through or Delta goes through in their training and selection process, and it is such a mental game. So compartmentalization is huge, and I talk about that a lot with Harvath, that he's got this iron box inside his mind where he has to put certain things. Barbara, I read a great review, and I wish I could remember the translator's name, but there was a great review in the New York Times many years ago about a translation of the Iliad and the Odyssey. And the person who translated them did a fabulous job. Took out any repeats, actually kind of freshened up the language to make it more current so that people could appreciate the themes and everything in the books even more. And what was in the review that I found fascinating was the suggestion that soldiers leaving for war, and this can be male, female, intelligence operative, SEAL, Delta Force, should read the Iliad, because it teaches you the parts of your civilized self that you need to leave behind and not take to the battlefield. And coming home from war, they should read the Odyssey, so they understand what parts of the battlefield to leave on the battlefield. So it's one of the things that I loved about the movie American Sniper, Chris Kyle's story, about how there's that scene where he's in a bar and Taya, his wife, calls him and says, "Wait, you're home? Where are you? You're at a bar?" And she's angry at him for not immediately telling her that he returned to the United States. He needed that time to decompress, because you cannot immediately grind into those other gears. And while you are downrange, and yes, you do have your downtime and things like that, you care about your family, you can't be thinking about that while you're operating. So, Patrick, I would say that ability to discipline your mind and put things in a box, the most successful operators in the military or in the intelligence world are the ones that can compartmentalize, put all that stuff away, and also highly intelligent and highly adaptable. So it's that discipline, the high intelligence, and the ability to adapt like that. All that comes together. And if you don't have particularly those three things, you're probably never going to even make it to the point where you're sent on operations like these brave men and women get sent on.
It's interesting that, you know, a lot of the Native American tribes, I'm thinking about the Navajo code talkers in particular, but, you know, the tribes have actual rituals to kind of transition the warrior from war back into society.
It's listen, we could do with a lot more of those kind of I'm losing my mind now, celebrations or rituals. Actually, it is the right word. You know, we used to celebrate, at least in the Jewish faith, they celebrate the passage of a young a boy or a girl into young adulthood. And in other faiths, we don't necessarily have that. We have in this country a prolonged adolescence where we're not successfully transitioning enough young people into adulthood and saying, okay, there was a book by Diana West years ago, and it was called The Death of the Grown-Up. And she talked about the fact that pre-1950s, that once you turned 18, you started dressing like your parents, you started listening to the same music your parents listened to. It was a real market shift. And instead, we've just kind of drifted. And so you get people that are not necessarily embracing adulthood, the responsibilities and the characteristics you need to internalize to be a successful adult. So I'm a big ritual guy. I like that idea of finding a way to separate different parts in your life. Particularly with our warriors, we have such a terrible high suicide rate in our veterans. And that's something that I've long been concerned with. And I would love it if something like that, like the American Indians did, could be part of helping people transition back. These people, I always say, this is what I do with Harvath. It's an homage to those brave men and women who go and do this nation's most dangerous business, because without those willing to fight and protect it, there is no American dream. There's no independent bookstore. There's no author. We don't get to have these things unless we have the people willing to protect our way of life and to protect us. So we're very, very fortunate.
We are, and that brought us full circle back to Winston Churchill, where we started, didn't it?
Yep.
Wow, Brad, this has been a wonderful experience. I miss the hundreds of people in the room and all that electric energy and watching you walk down the aisle and people holding up books. But you know, this is a wonderful conversation. It's just in different circumstances, and I hope that we can hold on to the good parts of this when we move on. I don't mean just you and me, but I mean in general. I think that we've developed some new tools to connect authors and readers together that I hope will, will open up new pathways. It's really exciting.
I think so too, and I want to thank everyone who's watching, because going out on tour and being able to see you and shake hands and get hugs and take photographs and sign books, and that's my favorite part of the entire thing, because like I said, I work for you. And so I like to come out and get feedback. It's like having the suggestion box in the front of the office, you know? It's like, I like this, do more of that. When are you going to bring that character back? I thrive on that energy. I'm away from all of you all year long. I'm reminded that, you know, I spend all year with Harvath. You only get to spend a little bit of time with him each year. But when you don't see me, know that I'm working very hard to make you happy and to take you on another great thrill ride with Harvath. And as I said earlier, I will never phone it in. That is my promise to you. You will always get the absolute best, most thrilling story I'm capable of. And I took a lot of risks with Near Dark, as I did last year with Backlash. I'm trying to stretch as a writer, and I hope that you enjoy some of the inner turmoil for Harvath, as well as all the external turmoil that we love to have in a thriller. So I hope that walking further out on that limb, it's not going to crack behind me. I don't think it will. I think you're going to love this book. So thank you.
I don't think it will crack either. I really thank you. And next year will be a true landmark for Harvath. 20 books. So
20 books.
We'll have to come up with something really exciting. I'm going to turn my back on you for 1 minute here before we leave. So that, Patrick, you want to just hold that up so that we can show. I don't know. You might need to hold it. All right. There's one, Mont Saint Michel. There it is. Can you see it now?
A little bit down.
Down. With the causeway and the sand. And then there's a much closer photo down. Sorry,
Perfect.
I can't really see it. You can't really get. I showed it to you. I emailed them to you.
You get to see where I saw
actually
the
got them.
causeway and then.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that as I said, it was a choice between hardwiring this laptop and doing something exciting. So anyway, Brad, it has been just an enormous treat. I want to thank you for giving us the privilege of launching Near Dark. Again, I encourage you to buy a copy while you can. And I want to wish all of you a wonderful evening. Good night.